I trusted her completely. Until the night I clicked that link and saw her doing things you only see in adult videos. And when I realized it was her, we had always talked about this moment. The day we'd finally finish our education and start a new life together. It was one of those dreams that kept us going through all the stressful exams, endless nights of studying, and seemingly infinite cups of cheap instant coffee. We made plans, big and small, sketching them out in late-night whispers, smiling at each other in the dark of our dorm room, confident that our dreams would soon become reality. And finally, when that day came, we moved into a small, cozy apartment on the quieter side of town. The place wasn't much, just a simple one-bedroom apartment with a kitchen barely big enough for two, a tiny living room, and a single window that looked out onto the street below. But to us, it felt perfect. It was ours. Our first home, the starting point for all those late-night plans we'd whispered in the dark. As we unpacked our boxes, placing dishes in the cabinets and photos on the shelves, every gesture, every laugh we shared felt like a celebration. Money was tight from the beginning, but we were optimistic. I found a job quickly, delivering food on my bicycle. It wasn't glamorous, but it meant steady paychecks and enough to cover our rent, groceries, and occasional nights out for cheap pizza. I didn't mind the rain, the exhausting hours, or the impatient customers. I was happy just to be earning money and contributing to our future. My girlfriend, Emma, promised to find work quickly too. She was smart, driven, the type of person who graduated top of our class. I never doubted her ability or her determination. In the evenings, when I'd come home soaked from rain or tired from cycling, she'd be sitting at her laptop, sending out applications and smiling bravely, telling me everything would fall into place soon. Her optimism was infectious, and despite the fatigue, those nights felt precious, cooking pasta together, eating at our tiny kitchen table, discussing job opportunities and dreams for our future. But days turned into weeks, and Emma still hadn't found a job. She grew quieter, and I noticed a shadow of worry creeping into her eyes, replacing her initial confidence. One evening, as I came home from another long shift, she looked up from her laptop, eyes bright again, a wide smile spreading across her face. "I found something," she announced excitedly, practically jumping out of her chair. "It's an entry-level position at a finance firm. The pay's decent, and they're even offering me a paid training period." I felt relief wash over me, mixed with pride. Emma deserved success more than anyone I knew. "That's amazing," I said, pulling her into a hug. "I knew you'd do it. What's the job exactly?" "Something with corporate accounts, bank statements," she explained, still grinning, but I noticed a slight hesitation, a vague note of uncertainty in her voice. "You don't sound so sure," I remarked gently, holding her close. "I guess I'm just nervous," she admitted softly. "I want to make this work for us. But let me finish the training, and I'll tell you all the details." I nodded, smiling warmly. I trusted her completely, so I didn't press her further. After all, she had always been the smartest one in any room, and if anyone could handle corporate finance, it was Emma. The next week flew by quickly, and Emma seemed busier than ever. She left the apartment early, returning late, tired but content. I admired her dedication, and when Friday finally arrived, she walked through our apartment door looking triumphant, holding a stack of bills in her hand. "What's this?" I asked, genuinely surprised. "My first week's paycheck," she said proudly, handing me the cash. "It's more than double what you make in a month, babe." I stared at the money, stunned. It was true. There was far more here than I'd imagined possible for an entry-level position, especially after just 1 week of training. "That's incredible," I said, feeling a mix of awe and confusion. "What exactly are they having you do?" "I told you," she said with a confident shrug. "Handling financial accounts, making sure everything checks out. But this much money, just for 1 week of training?" I pressed gently. Emma's expression faltered slightly, her eyes flickering away for just a moment. "They liked my performance, said I was a quick learner. There's potential for bonuses and advancement pretty quickly. I guess I just got lucky." I smiled again, deciding to push aside my doubts. "You're amazing, Emma. I never doubted you'd be successful. But this is beyond anything I'd imagined." She smiled back, relief and pride mixing in her expression. "We're finally going to be okay," she said softly, wrapping her arms around my neck. "We're finally going to have the life we always wanted." And for that moment, standing in our tiny kitchen, holding each other close. I believed her completely. I had no reason not to trust Emma. She had always been honest, always genuine. Her dreams were my dreams, and her successes felt like ours. But somewhere deep down, in a quiet part of myself that I chose to ignore, something felt off, just slightly. It was nothing I could pinpoint, nothing I could put into words, but it lingered in the back of my mind, whispering that the truth was somehow just out of reach. Still, I shook those thoughts away. Life was finally turning in our favor, and I wasn't about to ruin it with needless suspicion. After all, Emma was my world, and she was finally happy. That, I told myself firmly, was enough. But even then, standing there with Emma smiling brightly in my arms, I couldn't have guessed how quickly everything would soon unravel, how deeply the truth would wound, and how sharply our dreams would fracture once reality finally caught up to us. The next few weeks felt like a dream we had once only dared to imagine. With Emma bringing home what felt like mountains of cash every Friday, and me steadily working my delivery shifts, we began to see a version of life that felt almost comfortable. The pressure that used to sit on my chest each morning, the fear of an unpaid bill or an empty fridge, seemed to lighten. We even started talking about saving for a real vacation, something more than just camping a few hours away. But small cracks started to show, subtle at first. She said the new job demanded it, that she was taking on extra projects to make a good impression. When she spoke about work, though, the answers felt increasingly rehearsed. Not wrong exactly, just thin, like a curtain stretched over something she didn't want me to see. She kept her phone close now, charging it beside her pillow at night instead of on the kitchen counter. She'd tilt the screen away when notifications popped up, though she'd always smile and change the subject quickly enough that I convinced myself it didn't matter. Corporate life, she said once with a laugh, sliding the phone into her pocket. So many group chats. You don't want to know. I laughed too, pretending to believe her. Maybe part of me still did. I worked longer hours to match her energy, took double shifts when I could, wore myself out climbing staircases and dodging traffic, coming home sore but feeling like I was keeping pace with her ambition. I wanted to believe we were still running toward the same finish line. Then came the night she brought home a new phone. Sleek, latest model, better than anything I could afford. Work bonus, she said casually, peeling off the plastic with a satisfied smile. I asked her how a company could afford to give out phones for trainees. She smiled wider, that same bright, easy grin she wore when we moved in together, and kissed me on the forehead. They said I was worth investing in, she whispered. And for some reason, that sentence made me colder than any autumn rain ever had. But I said nothing, just smiled and kissed her back. Because she was happy. Because she was doing this for us. Because I wanted to believe that sometimes dreams did come true. Even if, deep down, some part of me was already bracing for the moment I would finally understand what it had really cost. The next few weeks passed faster than I expected. Emma seemed to fall into her new job with an ease that amazed me. She would leave early every morning, always dressed sharply but modestly, carrying a small black leather bag she had bought after her first paycheck. She texted me during the day, not as often as before, but enough to keep me feeling connected. When I came home after long shifts, she usually wasn't there yet, but I didn't mind. I told myself she was working hard, chasing the kind of success we both dreamed about. She brought home more money each week, sometimes in crisp bills neatly tucked inside an envelope, sometimes casually stuffed into her purse as if she barely thought about it. At first, I found it exciting, proof that we were moving forward, proof that soon we wouldn't have to scrape together change for groceries or ration our utilities. We even started talking about bigger things, maybe a better apartment, maybe taking a real vacation for the first time. Emma laughed and called it, finally living like adults. But somewhere in the back of my mind, the questions I had pushed aside began to grow louder. Because every time I asked her about her work, she was vague. Not defensive, not nervous, just vague. They're still training me, she would say with a casual shrug. Different departments handle different kinds of accounts. Confidentiality agreements. Babe, you know how corporations are. And I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. She was Emma, the girl who corrected teachers when they were wrong, the girl who volunteered to tutor struggling students for free. She wasn't the type to lie. But then there were the small things, like how she suddenly upgraded her phone without mentioning it, or how she bought a new dress, designer, I could tell from the label, and brushed it off as on clearance when I asked, or how sometimes she would come home late and smell faintly of perfume she never used before, a sharp, expensive scent that didn't match the Emma I knew. the one who always wore soft vanilla lotions and clean soap. I told myself it didn't matter. I reminded myself of the rent we could now easily afford, of the groceries that filled our tiny kitchen, of the evenings when she curled up against me on the couch and everything still felt normal or close enough to normal that I could pretend. One night, as we were eating takeout on the floor of our living room, because we still didn't own a proper table, I asked her again, gently, about her work. "You never really told me," I said, handing her a box of noodles. "What exactly do you do all day?" She smiled, but it was the kind of smile you give when you're already preparing an answer you've rehearsed. "Mostly data entry," she said. "Verifying account numbers, checking transaction reports. Boring stuff, honestly. Nothing worth talking about." I nodded, pretending that was enough. Pretending that I didn't see the way her hand tightened slightly around her fork. Pretending I didn't notice the way her eyes flickered down, away from mine, as she spoke. And maybe, I thought bitterly, maybe it really was boring. Maybe I was just paranoid. Maybe, after everything we had been through, I was the one ruining this with doubt. I pushed the thoughts aside and laughed, teasing her about how she was going to end up being our sugar mama if her boring job kept paying so well. She laughed too, leaning into me, wrapping her arms around my shoulders. For a moment, the world felt right again. But it was only a moment, because deep down, in the part of me that had learned too late to listen to my instincts, something was whispering that the money didn't come from spreadsheets and bank accounts. Something was telling me that Emma was building a life I didn't recognize. And soon, no amount of pretending would be enough to hold it together. It didn't happen overnight. It was gradual, so slow, in fact, that if you weren't paying close attention, you might have missed it. And for a while, I tried very hard not to pay attention. Emma started coming home later and later. First, it was occasional an extra hour here, an unexpected meeting there. But soon it became the norm. Most nights, I found myself eating alone at our little kitchen counter, reheating leftovers while checking my phone every few minutes, hoping for a message that usually came too late, always filled with apologies and vague excuses. "Working late again? Babe, sorry. Hope you're okay. Crazy day, don't wait up for me. Corporate audit running overtime. I'll explain later. Love you." She never explained later, and I stopped asking. Our weekends, once sacred, became fragmented. She'd say she needed to catch up on paperwork or attend a last-minute training session. Sometimes she left early in the morning, before I even woke up, leaving a note on the fridge with a heart drawn at the bottom, a heart that started to feel more like an obligation than a gesture. The apartment changed, too. It was small things at first, new makeup on the bathroom counter, brands I didn't recognize, lingerie tags in the trash, finer and more expensive than anything we could afford. Packages started arriving not in her name, but with her signature. Expensive shoes, clutches, accessories. Things she insisted were gifts from work, performance bonuses, rewards for outstanding effort. I wanted to believe her. I really did. Because admitting otherwise would mean admitting that the person I trusted more than anyone else might be lying to me. And I wasn't ready for that. So I smiled when she showed me her new bag. I nodded when she mentioned her big client dinners. I let her kiss me quickly on the way out the door, even as part of me noticed the scent of expensive perfume, a scent that didn't belong to our world of instant noodles and discount coupons. At night, when she finally came home, sometimes after midnight, she would crawl into bed beside me without saying much. I pretended to be asleep most of the time, not because I didn't want to talk, but because I didn't know how to ask the questions that were building in my chest. Questions like, where exactly are you going? Who are you really working for? Why does your smile feel different now? The distance between us wasn't just physical. It was emotional. It stretched across the small space of our bed, across the few feet of our living room, across every conversation that used to come so easily. The girl who once told me everything, every silly story, every small victory, every secret hope, had become someone I barely recognized. Still, I convinced myself it was a phase. Stress from work, pressure to succeed, maybe even the excitement of finally having financial freedom after so many years of struggle. I told myself that relationships had rough patches, that love meant patience, that if I just waited a little longer, the Emma I knew would come back. I was wrong, because the truth was she hadn't gone somewhere temporary. She had crossed into a world I wasn't invited to, a world I wouldn't have recognized even if she had tried to show it to me. And very soon, that world was going to collide with mine in a way that no amount of trust could survive. It was an ordinary evening, one of those nights that felt like every other. Tired bones, cheap food, in the silence of a small apartment that usually felt warm but tonight felt heavy. I had just gotten home from another long delivery shift, my phone nearly dead, my shoulders aching. Emma wasn't home yet, which wasn't unusual these days, and I didn't think much of it. I plugged in my phone, dropped my jacket, and opened the fridge, already bracing for the usual leftovers, noodles, maybe some juice if I was lucky. That's when the message came. It was from Dan. We weren't exactly close, just old classmates who kept in loose touch, the kind of friend you hear from on holidays or when something major happens. So when I saw his name pop up on my screen that night, I raised an eyebrow. Bro, I don't know how to say this. I really hope I'm wrong, but I just saw someone who looked exactly like your girl. You need to see this for yourself. There was a link below. Shortened, generic, unlabeled. At first, I just stared at it. I tried to brush it off. Maybe it was a prank, a mistake, something misinterpreted. But something in Dan's tone, that rare seriousness, made me hesitate. Dan wasn't the type to joke like this. He wasn't dramatic. If he said something like this, he meant it. I clicked. The site loaded fast. Black background, yellow accents. Instantly recognizable. I didn't need a logo to tell me where I had landed. It was one of those sites, the kind most people visit anonymously and forget about 2 minutes later. But this wasn't about anonymous curiosity. This was personal. I entered the name Dan had sent, a stage name, something suggestive, clearly fake, but close enough to Emma's real name that it made my chest tighten. The search results popped up instantly. There she was. Not a lookalike. Not someone with similar features. It was her. Same voice, smile, freckle under her left collarbone. Same eyes I had kissed 100 times in the dark. At first, I thought maybe I was wrong. Maybe it was edited. Maybe someone was using her image. But the more I watched, the clearer it became. It was her. Not in our apartment, thankfully, but in expensive, stylized locations. Rented spaces made to look like luxury homes. All soft lighting and marble countertops. The kind of backdrop designed to make people believe this wasn't just adult content. It was a lifestyle. I didn't know how long I sat there. Time didn't move. I opened more videos. Each one hit harder than the last. When I finally closed the laptop, I felt cold, like my mind had gone offline. Like everything I believed had turned into static. I just sat there, surrounded by the quiet decay of a love that had died without me even noticing. And then I heard the door unlock. The same familiar click that usually meant Emma was home. But this time it felt sharper, almost intrusive, like a sound I no longer belonged to. She came in humming softly, dropping her bag by the door without even noticing me sitting stiffly on the edge of the couch. And for a moment, I just watched her move around the apartment, doing all the small, ordinary things she always did. Except now, with the weight of what I had just seen, everything about her felt alien, like I was looking at a stranger who had somehow stolen the face of the girl I once knew. She made her way to the kitchen, opened the fridge casually, pulling out a bottle of water, and when she finally turned and noticed me sitting there, she smiled as if nothing was wrong, as if my whole world hadn't just been ripped apart. "You're home early," she said, her voice light, almost teasing. I didn't answer and didn't know how to start, how to find words big enough to match the flood inside my chest. Instead, I stood up slowly, walked over to the table where my laptop still sat open, and with a kind of cold detachment, I turned it toward her, pressing play on the video I had left paused. There was no sound, just the image, her image, flickering across the screen, unmistakable even through the pixelation and the artificial smiles meant for a faceless audience. Emma froze mid-step, the bottle slipping slightly in her hand. She didn't say anything. She just stared at the screen as if hoping that by not acknowledging it, it might somehow disappear. But it didn't. I stood there, feeling like the entire apartment had shrunk around us, the walls pressing in, the weight of betrayal so thick that breathing felt like trying to inhale water. She opened her mouth once, then closed it. Finally, she whispered, "You weren't supposed to find out." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because there was no other sound left inside me that made sense. "That's what you're worried about?" "That I found out," I said, my voice quieter than I expected, but shaking with everything I was holding back. She stepped forward, slowly, hands trembling, and for a second I thought she might reach for me, but she didn't. She wrapped her arms around herself instead, like she could shield herself from the consequences she had created. "It was supposed to be temporary," she said, her words tumbling out in a rushed, desperate whisper. Just until we got enough money. Just until things got better. It wasn't supposed to matter. I didn't think you'd ever. She cut off, shaking her head. Didn't think I'd ever see you like that? I asked, feeling something break a little deeper inside. Didn't think I'd notice the woman I love being sold like a cheap distraction on some disgusting website? Her face crumpled at that, and for a second, there was something almost childlike in her. Something that made me remember the girl who used to fall asleep with her head on my chest, laughing about how we were going to beat the world together. I did it for us, she said again, as if repeating it enough times would erase the images burned into my mind. You were killing yourself out there, delivering food, coming home soaked and broken, and I couldn't watch it anymore. I thought if I could just fix it, if I could just get us ahead, it would be worth it. I didn't answer. Because the truth was, I didn't know what hurt more, that she had sold herself, or that she thought I would have wanted her to. The silence stretched between us, long and unbearable. And then, when I thought she couldn't say anything worse, she dropped the last bomb. I'm pregnant, she said, almost too quietly to hear. My chest tightened, but I didn't react. Inside, though, 1,000 questions exploded at once, none of them with answers that I could live with. Was it mine? Was it someone else's? Was it even real? Or just one more desperate attempt to hold on to something that was already slipping through her fingers? I looked at her then, really looked, and realized that no matter how much I wanted to rewind, no matter how badly I wished I could pretend this was just a nightmare I could wake up from, we were far past the point of pretending. There was no going back to the life we had planned. There was only whatever broken pieces we chose to pick up or leave behind. The weeks that followed felt like living underwater. I kept working, kept delivering meals across the city, pedaling through rain and cold and traffic without really feeling any of it, because the only thing I could really feel anymore was the hollow space inside me where trust used to live. Emma called a few times during those first days, left voicemails that I didn't listen to, sent long messages that I didn't read beyond the first few lines. I wasn't ready to hear her voice yet. Wasn't ready to reopen wounds that hadn't even started to scab over. But time, as it always does, wore down the sharpest edges. After nearly a month, something inside me, maybe stubbornness, maybe foolish hope, agreed to meet her. I told myself it was just to talk, to find closure, to understand why everything had happened the way it did. Part of me still wanted to believe there was something salvageable underneath the wreckage. We met at a small cafe downtown. Emma was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with her hands wrapped tightly around a cup of tea she hadn't touched. She was wearing a plain sweater and jeans, no makeup except for the faint trace of mascara that made her eyes look even more tired than I remembered. For a few minutes, neither of us spoke. We just sat there, two people who had once shared every secret now struggling to even find words. Finally, she broke the silence. "Thank you for coming," she said quietly, her voice raw but steady. I nodded, not trusting myself to answer yet. "I didn't lie about everything," she continued after a moment, looking down at her tea. "The money was for us. I kept thinking that if I could just fix our problems, you wouldn't have to kill yourself working those jobs. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't know how to come back from it once it started." I listened, feeling each word land somewhere deep inside me, stirring up the confusion and anger I had been trying to bury. "And the pregnancy?" I asked eventually, my voice low. She hesitated, her fingers tightening around the cup. "It's real," she said. "It's yours." I searched her face, looking for signs of a lie, but if she was lying, she was better at it than before, or maybe I just didn't have the energy to keep doubting. We talked for a long time after that. About the mistakes, the regrets, the hopes we once shared. About how much things had changed, and whether it was even possible to rebuild anything on the shattered pieces we had left. And somehow, against all logic, against every instinct screaming inside me, we decided to try. Maybe it was habit. Maybe it was the lingering thread of love that neither of us could completely sever, no matter how much it had frayed. We moved back in together, taking it slow, trying to patch up the holes in our life. She found a regular job, something ordinary and steady. I kept delivering, saving every dollar I could. It wasn't easy, but for a while, it almost felt like we were building something real again. We laughed sometimes. We fought, too, more than before, but we also shared small moments that reminded me why I had loved her in the first place. And soon, I was going to find out that the past we thought we had left behind was only waiting for the right moment to strike again. Her birthday crept up on me faster than I expected. Between long shifts, bills piling up, and the quiet tension that still hung between us even on the best of days, I hadn't realized how close it was until Emma started casually mentioning it. Not directly, never asking for anything, just small hints. Little comments about how nice it would be to have a new MacBook for work. I wanted to get it for her. God, I wanted it more than anything. But reality didn't care about wishes. I worked as many shifts as I could, taking extra deliveries, cutting back on everything, skipped meals, wore the same beat-up shoes, ignored the gas light blinking on the dashboard. But when her birthday arrived, the numbers in my account still didn't add up. Instead of a new MacBook, I gave her a simple, thoughtful gift, a handwritten letter, a small silver bracelet, and a homemade dinner I spent hours preparing. She smiled. She said she loved it. But there was a flicker, so brief most people would have missed it, that crossed her face when she unwrapped the box, the tiniest flash of disappointment before she masked it with a hug and a kiss and a soft, "Thank you. Babe, it's perfect." I tried to ignore it, tried to tell myself it didn't matter. But it sat there, heavy and unspoken, between every word that night. After dinner, she said she was exhausted and went for a walk. She left. I sat at the table for a long time, staring at the dishes, the half-eaten cake, the empty chair across from me. After 1 week, my phone buzzed. It was email. No subject line, just a link. At first, I thought it was spam. Some bot scraping my address. But it was a site. A high-end escort service, black background and gold letters. Discreet companions for your most exclusive needs. I almost closed it until I saw her. Emma, listed under a different name, but there was no mistaking her. The photos were blurred just enough to feign anonymity, but not enough for anyone who knew her to miss it. She was offering herself for private bookings. My stomach twisted so hard I thought I might throw up right there. I scrolled, numb, as more details appeared, hourly rates, service descriptions written in elegant, coy phrases, schedules. For a while, I couldn't move. I just sat there, frozen, as the world I had tried so hard to rebuild shattered again around me. I needed proof. I needed more than screenshots, something undeniable. So I called a friend, not Dan this time, but someone I trusted even more. We made a plan. He would book under a fake name, set up the meeting, confirm the details. And I would be there, waiting, when she arrived. The days leading up to it were some of the longest of my life. I worked. I smiled when I had to. And when that night came, I stood behind the door of that rented apartment, heart hammering, hands shaking. I heard her before I saw her, her voice, laughing softly in the hallway, the sound so familiar it almost broke me. And then she stepped inside, dressed differently, painted differently, smiling in a way I hadn't seen in months, not for me, but for the idea of easy money. She saw us, me and my friend, standing there. Her smile cracked, her face drained of color. For a long moment, no one spoke. She opened her mouth once, then again, but no words came. Finally, she said, "I can explain." I shook my head. "No," I said, my voice steady in a way that surprised even me. "You already did." She stepped forward, reaching for me like that could erase everything, like I hadn't just seen her selling herself again for the second time. "I love you," she said desperately. "I did this for us. You have to believe me." I didn't even realize my hand moved until it happened, just a single, flat slap across her cheek, more out of heartbreak than anger, a final punctuation to a sentence that had gone on too long. She gasped, tears springing to her eyes, but I didn't stay to watch them fall. I turned, walked out into the cold night, and didn't look back. Because some things can be forgiven, but some betrayals aren't mistakes. They are choices. And once you see them for what they are, you can't ever unsee them. I didn't rush home that night. I walked for hours instead, letting the city swallow me, the endless rows of streetlights blurring into each other, the hum of distant cars a soft background to the silence that roared inside my head. Every step felt heavier than the last, as if each block I crossed was another weight added to my chest, pressing down, making it harder to breathe, harder to think, harder to believe this was really my life now. When I finally made it back to the apartment, the place we once called ours, it didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a set someone had built around a life that no longer existed. I didn't even bother turning on the lights. I just packed what I needed, a few clothes, my laptop, the photo of my mom that always sat by the bed, and left my keys on the kitchen counter without a note. There was nothing left to say. I moved into a small room on the other side of town the next day, nothing fancy, just 4 walls and a mattress on the floor, but it was mine. And more importantly, it was honest. No hidden deals, no secrets tucked into the corners. Just space. Real space. Space to breathe again. The first few days were brutal. I didn't eat much. I worked too much. I slept too little. I tried to convince myself that anger would make it easier, but the truth was, it wasn't anger that kept me up at night. It was sadness. It was grief for the life I thought we were building, for the girl I thought I knew, for the future that had slipped through my fingers like sand. Emma called a few times in the first week, left voicemails, sent long messages. I deleted them without listening. I couldn't hear her voice anymore. I couldn't risk believing her again, even if part of me still wanted to. After a while, the messages stopped. I didn't look her up. I didn't follow her online. I didn't ask about her through mutual friends. It was easier that way, cleaner, even if it left a hollow place inside me that nothing else seemed to fill for a long time. Months passed. I kept working, kept moving, kept living, even when it felt mechanical. One day, as I was sorting through old emails, I came across a message I hadn't opened, an automatic notification from that same escort site, saying the listing had been removed. I stared at it for a long time, not feeling anything at first. Just a few simple lines, written in the same plain way she used to leave me notes on the fridge when we still shared a life. Asterisk. I know I have no right to ask for anything after everything I did. I made mistakes too many to count, but it was never because I didn't care. I was just so tired of struggling, so tired of seeing you suffer and knowing I couldn't fix it. I took shortcuts. I chose wrong. I thought money could solve it. I was wrong. I see that now. I love you. But I can't live that life anymore, scraping by, counting pennies, always afraid. I hope you find the peace I never could. Asterisk. I read it once, then again, and again. Each time, feeling less and less anger, and more something that was harder to name, a kind of deep, settled sadness. Not sadness for her choices, not even for myself. Sadness for what we could have been if only the world, or we ourselves, had been just a little different. I didn't reply. Some wounds, even when forgiven, leave scars too deep to ever really forget. I closed the email and leaned back in my chair, staring at the cracks in the ceiling of my tiny room. I stood up, grabbed my jacket, and walked outside into the crisp morning air. There was a whole world out there, not waiting for me, not promising anything, just existing. And for once, that was enough because I wasn't chasing a future someone else had promised me anymore. I was building one, slow, imperfect, mine. Thanks for staying until the end. Life doesn't always give us the endings we wanted, but sometimes it gives us the new beginnings we needed.